I stared at the Emperor's golden cup as steam rose from the perfectly brewed tea, my hands trembling not from nerves, but from the overwhelming satisfaction of watching my stepmother's face drain of all color. The same woman who had forced me into servitude was now watching helplessly as the most powerful man in the empire recognized the brewing technique she had stolen from me in my previous life. This, this is the legendary Seven Clouds method, the Emperor whispered, his eyes wide with amazement. I haven't tasted tea brewed this way since my grandmother was alive. Who taught you this ancient technique? Behind me, I could hear my stepsister Mei Lin's sharp intake of breath. In my first life, she had watched me perfect this very method for years, only to steal my notes and claim credit after poisoning me on the day of the imperial tea competition. Now, 17 years old again with all my memories intact, I had spent months planning this moment. Your Majesty, I said, bowing deeply while keeping my voice steady. This humble servant learned it from observing the old masters. It wasn't entirely a lie. I had spent my previous life studying under Master Chen before my family's betrayal led to my death. My stepmother, Lady Wang, stepped forward with her practiced smile, the same false sweetness that had fooled everyone for years. Your Majesty, surely there's been some mistake. My daughter Mei Lin is the true master of the Seven Clouds technique in our household. This girl is merely a servant who— Silence! The Emperor's voice cut through her words like a blade. I know genuine mastery when I taste it. This tea was brewed with a level of skill that takes decades to achieve. His piercing gaze fixed on me. Tell me, girl, what is your name? Li Xiang, Your Majesty. The same name I'd carried in both lives, though in this one I was determined to reclaim the honor it deserved. The Emperor set down his cup with deliberate care. Li Xiang, the name suits you. Beautiful fragrance. This tea indeed carries the most exquisite aroma I've experienced in years. He turned to face my family, his expression growing cold. Lady Wang, you claimed your daughter was responsible for today's tribute tea. Yet this young woman was the one who prepared and served it. Explain this discrepancy. I watched my stepmother's composure crack. In my previous life, she had orchestrated my downfall with such calculated precision, convincing my dying father to leave everything to her and Mei Lin, while I received nothing. She had reduced me to a servant in my own family home, forcing me to work in the kitchens, while Mei Lin received the finest education and opportunities. When I had finally mastered the Seven Clouds technique, a skill that could have secured my future, they had eliminated me to steal my achievement. But death had given me an unexpected gift. When I opened my eyes, 17 years old again, the morning after my father's funeral, I possessed not only my memories, but also a strange new ability. I could sense the true nature of tea leaves, understanding their properties and potential with just a touch. It was as if the tea gods themselves had blessed my rebirth. The past 3 years had been a careful dance of appearing weak while growing stronger. I had pretended to be the same broken, grieving girl while secretly honing my skills far beyond what I had achieved in my first life. I had also planted seeds of doubt about Mei Lin's supposed expertise, subtle questions that made the servants whisper about her lack of practical knowledge. Your Majesty, Lady Wang stammered, Li Xiang she assists in the kitchen. Surely any skill she possesses comes from watching my daughter Mei Lin practice? Mei Lin nodded eagerly, her face flushed with panic. Yes, father always said she was good at copying others. I've been teaching her the basics. The basics? The Emperor's eyebrows rose dangerously. You call the Seven Clouds technique basics? This is a method so complex that even my court's tea masters struggle with it. He gestured to the cup. The water temperature must be precisely controlled at 7 different stages. The leaves must be arranged in a specific pattern that changes with the season. And the pouring technique requires a level of muscle memory that takes years to develop. This is not something one learns by observation. I kept my head bowed, but inside I was singing with triumph. In my previous life, I had spent 4 years perfecting this technique under Master Chen's tutelage before my stepfamily's betrayal. Now, with my enhanced abilities and complete knowledge of their plans, I had been able to achieve even greater mastery. Perhaps, the Emperor continued, his voice growing more severe, I should test both young women to determine who truly possesses this knowledge. My stepmother's face went white. Your Majesty, surely that's not necessary. On the contrary, it's entirely necessary. The emperor clapped his hands, and immediately several servants appeared. Bring two identical sets of tea implements. I want to see both daughters of this house demonstrate their brewing skills. As the servants scurried to obey, I caught Mei Lin's desperate glance toward our stepmother. In my first life, this was the moment when they would have found an excuse to eliminate me from the competition. Lady Wang would have claimed I was feeling ill, or that it would be inappropriate for a mere servant to perform before the emperor. But I had been prepared for this. Your Majesty, I spoke up before Lady Wang could object. I am honored by your interest, but I fear my position in this household might make such a demonstration inappropriate. Perhaps it would be better if— Nonsense, the emperor interrupted, exactly as I had hoped he would. Skill recognizes no social boundaries. Some of the finest artisans come from humble origins. His eyes narrowed as he looked at Lady Wang. Unless, of course, there is some reason why this young woman should not be allowed to demonstrate her abilities. The trap was perfectly set. If Lady Wang objected now, she would appear to be hiding something. If she allowed the demonstration, Mei Lin's incompetence would be exposed. I watched her struggle with the impossible choice I had maneuvered her into. Of course not, Your Majesty, she finally managed. Both girls are welcome to demonstrate their skills. The tea implements were brought quickly, two identical sets of the finest porcelain and silver. I moved to my station with calm confidence, while Mei Lin approached hers with obvious nervousness. She kept glancing at me, trying to observe my setup, just as she had done in my previous life when she was stealing my techniques. You may begin, the emperor announced. I started with the water, knowing that this was where Mei Lin would make her first critical error. The 7 clouds technique required water heated to exactly 7 different temperatures in sequence, each stage lasting precisely the right amount of time. In my first life, Mei Lin had never bothered to learn the timing. She had simply planned to use my notes during the competition. As I worked, I allowed my enhanced senses to guide me. I could feel the exact moment when the water reached each required temperature, could sense the readiness of the tea leaves as they prepared to release their essence. This was the gift my rebirth had brought me, an almost supernatural connection to the art I had died perfecting. Beside me, Mei Lin was struggling. She had started heating her water too quickly, and I could see sweat beading on her forehead as she tried to remember the steps she had never truly learned. She kept looking toward Lady Wang, silently begging for help that couldn't come. Interesting, the emperor murmured, walking between our stations. One moves with confidence and precision, while the other seems uncertain. I began the leaf arrangement, placing each piece according to the ancient pattern that corresponded to the current season. This was the most complex part of the technique, requiring not just knowledge, but years of muscle memory to execute properly. In my enhanced state, I could feel each leaf's individual character, placing them in perfect harmony. Mei Lin, meanwhile, was simply trying to copy my movements from her peripheral vision. But she was too far behind now, her water temperatures wrong, her timing off. When she attempted the leaf arrangement, her hands shook so badly that she knocked over her preparation bowl. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, she gasped, falling to her knees. I seem to be nervous in your presence. Perhaps if I could try again? There's no need, the emperor said coolly. The demonstration has been quite illuminating. I continued my work, moving into the pouring phase with the fluid grace that had taken me years to achieve. The 7 clouds technique required 7 distinct pours, each creating a different layer of flavor that would blend perfectly when the tea was finally ready. As I worked, the distinctive aroma began to fill the room, the same heavenly fragrance that had made this technique legendary. When I finished, I stepped back and bowed. Your Majesty. The emperor approached my station and lifted the cup, inhaling deeply. His face transformed as the full complexity of the aroma reached him. Extraordinary. This is even finer than the first cup. He took a sip, closed his eyes, and was silent for a long moment. This is not the work of someone who learned by watching others. This is the result of years of dedicated study and practice. He set the cup down and turned to face Mei Lin, who was still kneeling beside her ruined preparation. And you, young lady, seem to have never successfully brewed this technique in your life. Your Majesty, Mei Lin began, but he held up a hand for silence. Lady Wang, the emperor's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I find myself curious about the true circumstances in this household. How is it that a servant possesses master level skills, while your daughter, who supposedly learned from the finest teachers, cannot even complete the basic setup? Lady Wang's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I could see her mind racing, trying to find an explanation that wouldn't reveal the truth of what they had done. But I wasn't going to let her escape so easily. Your Majesty, I said quietly, if I may speak? You may. 3 years ago, when my father lay dying, he made me promise to continue our family's tea traditions. He said that the seven clouds technique had been passed down through our bloodline for generations, and that it was my responsibility to preserve it. I paused, allowing the words to sink in. I have spent every day since then honoring that promise. The Emperor's eyes sharpened. Your father? But I was told that Lady Wang's late husband had no knowledge of advanced tea techniques. Li Ming was my natural father, Your Majesty, I said, each word carefully chosen. Lady Wang became his wife later, bringing her daughter Mei Lin into our household. I watched understanding dawn on the Emperor's face. In this empire, bloodline and inheritance were sacred concepts. If my father had possessed knowledge of the Seven Clouds technique, it would naturally pass to his blood daughter, not his stepfamily. I see, the Emperor said slowly. And when your father died, what became of his tea implements and study materials? This was the moment I had been building toward. They were taken by Lady Wang, Your Majesty. She said that as the new head of household, all my father's possessions belonged to her. I was told that I would work in the kitchens and that Mei Lin would represent our family's tea heritage. Lady Wang's face had gone beyond pale to a sickly green. Your Majesty, the girl is confused by grief. My late husband left everything to me because you convinced a dying man to disinherit his own daughter? The Emperor's voice was deadly quiet. And then you claimed credit for skills that belonged to her bloodline? The room fell silent except for Mei Lin's quiet sobbing. She had collapsed completely under the weight of her exposed deception, and Lady Wang looked like she might faint at any moment. But I wasn't finished. In my previous life, their betrayal had run deeper than simple theft of credit. They had actively destroyed my chances at any other opportunities, spreading rumors that I was unstable and difficult. They had even intercepted letters from potential teachers and marriage prospects, ensuring I remained isolated and dependent on their goodwill. Your Majesty, I continued, I have remained loyal to my family despite their treatment of me, but I fear there may be other irregularities in how my father's estate was handled. The Emperor's expression grew thunderous. What kind of irregularities? I had spent months gathering evidence this time around, knowing exactly where to look because I remembered what they had done. Letters that were meant for me but were hidden. Opportunities that were declined in my name without my knowledge. I discovered these things while organizing the kitchen stores where my father's old documents had been moved. This was partially true. I had found some of the evidence in the kitchens, where Lady Wang had carelessly stored papers she thought would never be discovered. But I had also retrieved items I remembered seeing in my first life, knowing exactly where Lady Wang had hidden them. The Emperor turned to Lady Wang with a look that could have melted iron. Madam, these are serious accusations. Interfering with correspondence intended for another person is a crime against the imperial postal system. Fraudulent management of an estate violates our inheritance laws, and attempting to deceive the imperial court. He let the words hang in the air like a death sentence. Your Majesty, please. Lady Wang fell to her knees. I can explain everything. The girl is confused. She doesn't understand the complexities of managing an estate. I understand perfectly, I interjected, producing a small bundle of letters from my sleeve. I had retrieved these from Lady Wang's private chambers the night before, using my memories of their hiding place. These letters were addressed to me, but they bear evidence of being opened and resealed. Some contain offers of employment and education that were declined in my name, though I never saw them. The Emperor took the letters and examined them with the eye of someone familiar with detecting forgery and tampering. His face grew darker with each document he reviewed. This letter, he said, holding up one particular document, is from Master Chen, the imperial tea consultant. He was offering to take you as a formal apprentice 3 years ago. He looked up at Lady Wang with disgust. A position that would have provided not only education but a substantial stipend. Yet it was declined with a forged signature. Master Chen. In my first life, I had studied with him in secret, meeting him in the markets where he sold rare teas. He had been impressed by my natural ability and had mentioned wanting to recommend me for formal training, but I had never received any official offer. Now I knew why. Lady Wang had intercepted and declined it to keep me trapped in her household. Furthermore, the emperor continued, examining another letter, there are 3 different marriage proposals here, all from respectable families, all declined without your knowledge. The responses bear your supposed signature, but the handwriting is clearly different from the signature on these other documents that you've presented to me today. Mei Lin looked up from her sobbing, horror dawning on her face as she realized the true scope of her mother's deceptions. Even she hadn't known about the intercepted letters. "Mother," she whispered, "what have you done?" But Lady Wang was beyond responding. She remained on her knees, her face a mask of terror as she realized that her carefully constructed lies were crumbling beyond any hope of repair. The emperor handed the letters to one of his attendants. "Have these examined by the court's handwriting experts immediately. I want a full report on the extent of this forgery." He turned back to me. "Li Xiang, it appears you have been the victim of a systematic campaign to steal not only your inheritance, but your entire future." I bowed deeply, allowing tears to flow freely now. These were genuine tears, not of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and triumph. In my first life, I had died never knowing the full extent of what had been stolen from me. Now, not only was I alive to see justice done, but the emperor himself was ensuring that every crime would be exposed and punished. "Your Majesty is too kind," I managed. "I have simply tried to honor my father's memory and preserve our family's traditions, despite the circumstances." "Your dedication is admirable," the emperor said, "but I think it's time for a change in those circumstances." He gestured to his guards. "Arrest Lady Wang on charges of estate fraud, postal interference, and attempted deception of the imperial court. Her daughter will be questioned as a potential accomplice." "No!" Mei Lin scrambled forward on her knees. "Your Majesty, I didn't know about the letters. I thought the tea techniques were really ours. Mother told me that father had taught them to her." The emperor looked down at her with cold assessment. "Ignorance is not innocence when it comes to accepting stolen honors. You stood by while this young woman was reduced to servitude in her own family home. You allowed her to be treated as a servant while you enjoyed the benefits of her stolen inheritance." As the guards moved forward to arrest Lady Wang, she made one final desperate attempt. "Your Majesty, you don't understand. The girl is dangerous. She's not natural. The way she brews tea, it's like she knows things she shouldn't know." I felt a moment of panic. Had she somehow suspected my rebirth? But the emperor's reaction was not what she had hoped for. "Not natural?" His voice was filled with contempt. "Madam, I have just witnessed one of the most skilled tea preparations of my lifetime. If you consider exceptional talent to be not natural, then I pity your limited understanding of human potential." The guards seized Lady Wang, who continued protesting her innocence even as they dragged her away. Mei Lin was taken for questioning, though more gently, due to her possible ignorance of the full scope of the crimes. When the room finally fell quiet, the emperor turned to me with an expression of genuine respect. "Li Xiang, you have shown remarkable grace under trying circumstances. Your skill and dedication honor your father's memory and our empire's traditions." "Thank you, Your Majesty." "I have a proposal for you," he continued. "Master Chen spoke highly of you in his letter, despite never having received a response. I would like to arrange for you to study with him officially, as a ward of the imperial court. Your talents deserve proper recognition and development." My heart soared, but I kept my expression humble. "Your Majesty, I am deeply honored, but I worry about my family's estate. With Lady Wang arrested, there will be no one to manage." "The estate will be returned to its rightful heir, you," the emperor said firmly. "A full investigation will determine what was stolen and what can be recovered. In the meantime, the court will appoint a trustworthy administrator to manage the property until you come of age." This was beyond my wildest hopes. Not only was I free of my stepfamily's abuse, but I would receive proper training and regain my inheritance. The emperor was essentially guaranteeing my future success and security. Master Chen will be pleased to finally meet his intended student, the emperor added with what might have been the hint of a smile. He has been wondering for 3 years why his generous offer was so rudely declined. I laughed despite myself, a sound of pure joy that I hadn't made since my rebirth. I look forward to explaining the misunderstanding to him, Your Majesty. I'm sure you'll have many interesting conversations. The Emperor picked up his teacup one final time, savoring the last drops of my Seven Clouds brew. Excellence like this should never be hidden or suppressed. You have given me a great gift today. Not just exceptional tea, but the reminder that true talent will always find a way to shine through adversity. As the Emperor and his retinue prepared to leave, he paused at the door. Oh, and Li Xiang, when you begin your studies with Master Chen, ask him to teach you the Eight Heavens technique. I think you're ready for something even more challenging. The Eight Heavens technique, a legendary brewing method that I had only heard whispered about in my first life. It was said to be so difficult that only 3 people in the Empire's history had ever mastered it, but with my enhanced abilities and the proper training, perhaps I could become the 4th. After everyone had left, I stood alone in the room where my life had just been transformed. The same room where, in my first life, I had served tea to family members who despised me, where I had been treated as less than a servant in my own home. Now the estate was mine again. Lady Wang would face imperial justice for her crimes. Mei Lin would have to build her own life without stolen advantages. And I would study with the greatest tea master in the empire, developing skills that would bring honor to my family name. But perhaps the sweetest victory was simpler than all of that. I walked to the cabinet where Lady Wang had stored my father's things after claiming them as her own. Using a key I had seen her hide years ago, I opened the locked drawer and retrieved a small, carved wooden box. Inside was my father's personal tea set, the one he had used to teach me my first brewing techniques when I was just a child. Lady Wang had kept it as a trophy, never realizing its true value wasn't in the precious materials, but in the memories it held. I cradled the familiar weight of my father's favorite cup, remembering his patient voice as he guided my small hands through the basic movements. Tea is not just about techniques, Yang, he had said. It's about understanding. Understanding the leaves, the water, the moment, and yourself. When you truly understand, you can create something that touches people's hearts. In my first life, I had understood the technique, but not the deeper truth. I had been so focused on proving my skill that I hadn't realized the real power lay in the connections tea could create, the way it could bring people together, or in this case, reveal the truth about people's character. 3 years later, I knelt in Master Chen's private study, preparing tea for a gathering of the Empire's most respected tea masters. It was my final examination before receiving my formal certification as a master practitioner. The technique I was demonstrating was indeed the Eight Heavens method, which I had not only learned but adapted and improved upon. My hands moved with fluid precision, each motion the result of countless hours of practice and study. But more than that, each movement was infused with the wisdom that could only come from having lived through loss and found my way back to purpose. Master Chen watched with obvious pride as I completed the complex brewing sequence. Around the room, other masters murmured in appreciation as the extraordinary aroma filled the air. Perfect, Master Chen announced. Li Xiang, you have not only mastered the Eight Heavens technique, but brought your own innovations to it. I have never seen such intuitive understanding in one so young. I bowed deeply to my teacher and the assembled masters. I am honored by your instruction and guidance, Master Chen. The honor has been mine, he replied. In 3 years, you have progressed from talented novice to accomplished master. Your dedication would make your father proud. As I served the tea to each master, I reflected on how completely my life had transformed. The estate that Lady Wang had tried to steal was now prospering under my management. I had used the traditional techniques my father had taught me, combined with my enhanced understanding, to create tea blends that were sought after by the nobility throughout the empire. Lady Wang herself had been sentenced to 10 years of hard labor for her crimes. The investigation had revealed even more theft than I had initially suspected. She had sold several of my father's rare tea varieties and pocketed the proceeds, claiming they had been damaged by poor storage. Mei Lin had been given a lesser sentence of public service, since her participation was deemed to have been based on her mother's lies. But perhaps the most satisfying justice was that neither of them would ever again be able to claim credit for skills they had never possessed. Lady Wang's reputation in society was completely destroyed, and Mei Lin had been forced to start over with her real abilities, which proved to be quite ordinary. Master Li, one of the assembled tea masters, addressed me, using the title I had earned through my certification. I understand you'll be opening your own school soon. Yes, Master Zhou, I replied. I want to ensure that traditional techniques are properly preserved and taught. Too often, I've seen knowledge lost or corrupted through careless handling. Master Chen smiled at my diplomatic phrasing. He knew the full story of my stepfamily's theft, though I had never spoken bitterly about it in his presence. Master Li has already attracted several promising students, he added. Her teaching methods are quite innovative. Indeed, I had developed new ways of explaining the complex techniques that made them more accessible to beginning students. My enhanced understanding allowed me to break down the methods in ways that previous teachers had never attempted. Word of my school's effectiveness was spreading quickly among families who wanted their children to learn proper tea arts. That evening, as I sat in my father's study, now restored to its original purpose, I prepared a simple cup of tea using his old wooden implements. This had become my nightly ritual, a way of maintaining connection with both my father's memory and my own journey. As I sipped the familiar comfort of a perfectly brewed cup, I reflected on the strange gift that my death and rebirth had given me. In my first life, I had been focused on proving myself, on achieving recognition for my skills. I had seen tea brewing as a competition, a way to demonstrate my worth. But this second life had taught me something more profound. Tea was not about proving anything to anyone else. It was about creating moments of peace, understanding, and connection. When I serve tea now, whether to the emperor or to my students, I wasn't trying to impress them with my technique. I was trying to offer them a moment of perfect harmony, a brief respite from the complexities of life. My enhanced abilities had certainly helped me achieve my revenge against those who had wronged me. But the real transformation had come from understanding that my greatest power lay not in what I could take from others, but in what I could give to them. A soft knock at my study door interrupted my thoughts. Master Li, a messenger has arrived from the imperial palace. I opened the door to find one of my students holding an ornate scroll bearing the emperor's seal. With curiosity, I broke the seal and read the contents. The emperor was requesting my presence at the palace the following week. A delegation from a neighboring empire was visiting, and he wanted me to demonstrate the Seven Clouds technique as part of the diplomatic entertainment. But more than that, he was asking me to prepare a special tea blend that would represent our empire's finest cultural achievements. I smiled as I set the letter aside. In my first life, I had dreamed of such recognition, imagining it as the ultimate validation of my worth. Now I understood that this invitation was not an endpoint, but simply another opportunity to share the beauty and wisdom that tea could offer. 3 days later, I stood in the Imperial Palace's Great Hall, surrounded by delegates from across the known world. Before me were arranged the finest tea implements money could buy, along with rare and precious tea varieties that had been specially selected for this diplomatic occasion. But the most important element was not the expensive equipment or rare ingredients. It was the knowledge and understanding that I brought to the moment. Knowledge that had been tested by betrayal, refined by loss, and ultimately perfected through the strange blessing of a second chance at life. As I began the Seven Clouds technique, I felt the familiar calm that came with perfect understanding. Each movement was precise, but more than that, each movement was purposeful. I was not just brewing tea. I was creating a bridge between cultures, offering these foreign delegates a taste of our empire's deepest traditions and values. The emperor watched with obvious satisfaction as the distinctive aroma filled the hall and the assembled dignitaries leaned forward with genuine interest. When I finally served the completed tea, the silence that followed was profound. Extraordinary, whispered the lead delegate, an elderly woman whose own empire was renowned for its tea culture. I have never experienced such depth and complexity in a single cup. This is artistry of the highest order. The emperor beamed with pride, not just in my skill, but in what that skill represented about our empire's commitment to excellence and tradition. Master Li represents the finest of our cultural heritage, he announced to the gathering. Her knowledge and dedication embody the values that have made our empire great. As the evening continued and I moved among the delegates, answering questions about technique and tradition, I realized that this was exactly where I was meant to be, not seeking revenge or validation, but sharing something beautiful and meaningful with others who could appreciate it. When the formal celebration ended and the last delegate had been escorted to their quarters, the emperor approached me privately. Master Li, your performance tonight was flawless. You have brought great honor to yourself and our empire. Thank you, Your Majesty. It was my privilege to represent our traditions. He studied me for a moment with the perceptive eyes that had first seen through my stepfamily's deceptions. 3 years ago, when I first met you, I saw a young woman of obvious talent who had been grievously wronged. Tonight, I see a master who has transformed that wrong into something greater than herself. His words touched something deep in my heart. Your Majesty's support made all the difference in my life. Perhaps, he said thoughtfully, but I think the real difference came from within you. Talent can be taught, technique can be learned, but wisdom, the kind of wisdom that allows someone to create beauty from suffering, that comes from the choices we make about who we want to become. As I made my way home through the quiet streets, the Emperor's words echoed in my mind. He was right, of course. The supernatural abilities that had come with my rebirth were merely tools. The real transformation had happened when I chose to use those tools not just for revenge, but for creation, for beauty, for connection with others. Lady Wang and Mei Lin had stolen years of my life and nearly destroyed my future. But in the end, their betrayal had led me to something far greater than what they had taken. I had not just reclaimed my father's legacy, I had built upon it, creating something new and meaningful that would outlast all of us. My father's old tea set sat in its place of honor in my study, but now it was accompanied by new implements, rare varieties from across the empire, and, most importantly, by the writings and teachings I was creating for future generations. The knowledge that had nearly died with me would now live on through my students, ensuring that the beauty and wisdom of proper tea preparation would never again be lost to theft or deception. As I prepared for sleep that night, I offered a quiet prayer of gratitude. Not to the mysterious forces that had granted me rebirth, but to my father, whose patient teachings had given me the foundation for everything I had achieved. His love and guidance had been the true inheritance, one that no amount of theft or betrayal could ever touch. In my dreams, I saw endless possibilities stretching ahead, students to teach, techniques to perfect, traditions to preserve and innovate upon. The girl who had once been poisoned and forgotten was gone, replaced by a woman who had found her true purpose not in seeking revenge, but in creating something beautiful enough to heal the wounds of the past and inspire hope for the future.